Hello, hello. Welcome to the Second Act Entrepreneur Show. This week we are talking about what happens when you are floating aimlessly, trying to figure out what your next act of your career is going to be, and you are totally disconnected from your purpose. I have brought on a special guest. His name is Scott Perry, and Scott is known as the Encore Life Coach, meaning the Encorepreneur. That's his term. So people that are moving into that second career, that second entrepreneurship option after having a full-on career. And he is the person that helps you find fulfillment, meaning, and make a difference and a living in your life's third act. He calls it the third act. I call it the second act. It's basically the same thing. And he has brought wisdom, wit, and humor to this interview, and I think you're going to be inspired. Before we dive into the interview, I do want to let you know that if you're struggling with the business and marketing side of coming up with, how to promote what you're doing and promote your business, you may be missing a plan. And a lot of times I'll work with entrepreneurs and people moving into entrepreneurship, and they're not used to having to fulfill all the different roles that were previously fulfilled by other people on their team or in their organization. So I put together a resource for you, and it is called five steps to a profitable marketing strategy. And what it does is it walks you through creating a plan. So we're getting ready to move into Q4. And with that in mind, you may be thinking, oh, it's too late. I can't have a good year this year. Well, most people, as entrepreneurs, do really good business at the end of the year. And it's because they maybe haven't met their goals, or they kick their butt into high gear, or whatever it might be. So it's not too late to not only plan for Q4, but then to use the strategy plan to plan out for next year. And that just puts you 10 paces ahead of your competitors in planning out your marketing. So if you want to grab that guide and work out your strategy for not only the rest of this year, but into next year, head over to my website at elisaconnor.com/strategy-guide and download that free resource. It's going to give you the 5 steps you need to follow for any strategy in your business, specifically marketing, and get you on the road to having a plan that you can follow, taking small action, which we're going to get to in just a minute in this interview, and move you further towards your goals and your accomplishments and leaving your legacy. So without further ado, let's dive into this interview with Scott Perry. Hey there, I'm Elisa Connor, ex-corporate marketer turned entrepreneur. And along the way, I made all the mistakes just so you don't have to. Chances are you have a pretty full career. You've got experience, expertise, and probably a whole lot of education. The problem is people can't find you. This is why each week on the Second Act Entrepreneur Show, we feature expert education, marketing insights, and mindset shifts that are going to help you create a profitable business so you can secure your legacy, ensuring that you thrive not only in your first career, but also your second act. Welcome to the Second Act Entrepreneur Show. So if you will help me welcome Scott Perry to the Second Act Entrepreneur Show. Hello, Scott. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Elisa, it is so good to be here spending some time with you today.
I am so excited that you're here, and I am really excited that we were able to connect on LinkedIn. So before we dive into the interview, would you tell my audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you help?
Sure. Well, first things first, I am a husband and a father and a teacher from Floyd, Virginia, a little town in southwestern Virginia that's close to Virginia Tech, if people know where that is. I primarily made a living as a musician for almost all of my adult life, and in the last 6 years, as I was under contract as a head coach in Seth Godin's Akimbo workshops, I built this thing called Creative on Purpose. And under that banner, I am currently an Encore Life Coach. I have a program called The Art of Encore Living, and what I'm doing is helping people that are in or entering midlife reconnect with their soul's true calling and turning that into a part-time online lifestyle business that is fulfilling, fun, and helps fund their retirement.
Love that. So in this world, we call those people second act entrepreneurs. They have done exactly what you said, which is they've had a full on career in some other capacity, sometimes more than one career. And then they take that skill set and they plug it into their second act. So that's why I thought it was such a great opportunity to have you on. And I like to dive right into purpose because I think a lot of times when people are moving into this second act, I think you call it the third act. So either way, that second phase of their life where they're moving past raising kids and having whatever career they entered into from say their 20s or 30s, they somewhere along the way we lose track of our purpose and who we're meant to be and what we're supposed to be doing while we're here on this planet. So what is the first thing you would tell people when they come to you and they're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to uncover or excavate where my purpose is at this point. What would you share with them?
Well, it's a great question. The first thing that I would tell anybody that is experiencing that kind of angst about, my role is, raising a family or making a living is nearing its end, and I don't know who I am outside of those roles. The first thing I would say is it's not your fault because you've actually, although I do believe that we are all born with a dharma in the yoga tradition or a purpose in the Western tradition. We have a unique talent or gift that we are meant to live into and live through. We live in a culture, especially here in the United States, where we are encultured to, first by parents and peers, and then in school and then in occupation to follow a roadmap that's serving somebody else's needs and not our own, that's serving something else's purpose and not our own. And we can go through all of that, and many people do feel a sense of, purpose and vocation as they're raising their family. I certainly hope so, and as they're engaged in their career. And in the second half of life, we have this glorious opportunity to hit the pause button and reflect back on, what was the thing I was born for? And how can I now, in this second act or third act of life, depending on what terminology you want to use, how can I live into that? And I always, when people come to me, they are in some way, shape, or form saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I have this, my life is speaking to me. And I always say yes, because your life has been wanting to speak through you for some time. So there's lots of ways that you can, go about reconnecting with what I call your soul's true vocation. One of the tools that I use is a Venn diagram where we talk about, let's get back to who you really are, what you're really good at, and where you really belong. Who you really are your core values, the guiding principles by which you live your life, the things upon which you will not equivocate, the vision of the world that you would like to co-create. What you're really good at, you can definitely lean on the hard skills that you learned in school and on the job. And of course, the soft skills of human to human connection and creation, collaboration, communication. But there's also this gift, this unique thing, this talent that you were born with. And we have some surveys and some things that you can do to define those things, who your values and your talents. And then the gig is, well, where do I belong? Where are the people who share my values and need my talents to enhance their lives? And at the intersection of that is where your soul's true purpose, calling, vocation can be found. And just to give another quick way of thinking about that, in Western civilization, we are often very outward facing. We are paying attention to our becoming. And we are often attached to, some sort of aspiration out there in the future. And of course, we have collided enough with Eastern spiritual and philosophical traditions to know that it's also a matter of the being, the presence, the mindfulness. But I think if you look back at what you've been, and one of the exercises I take people through is, let's pull out a picture of you at age 5, and let's look at that picture and reflect back on, what did that person love to do? What lit them up? What are the things that absorbed them and so much that they lost track of time? What filled them with awe and wonder? What were the things that you just really enjoyed doing? And oftentimes people can really reconnect with, that moment before they were corrupted by institutionalized education and occupation, and start to come up with some really fascinating ideas about, like, what might my soul's calling might actually be.
I love that. And I love that you use a visual in there, because I think a lot of times we get in this mode, it almost becomes where we beat ourselves up. We're like, why can't I figure out my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? And you're just sitting there and you're going in a circle. And we have had a lot of life between age 5 and where we are now. So let's just say 50, 50-ish, 40, late 40s, early 50s. And so when you're looking back on that, you can often just say you can get into the mode of beating yourself up where you're like, I don't know what it is. I don't remember what those things are. And so I like the idea of using a visual to reignite that part of your brain. But if somebody's stuck, because as you said, we spend a lot of time looking out into the world, and I've been there, and I'm sure you've been there, and a lot of people listening also engage in Comparschlager. So if you're not familiar with what Comparschlager is, it's a term that I use all the time, that it's basically, you're just sitting there, if you think about when you're in college and you're taking shots of Jägermeister or something nasty like that, and you're just like, you're to the point of oblivion, because everybody's been there at some point. But you're doing it with comparing yourself to others. And so if you're in that mode of like, I should be further along, I should have this much in my retirement, the shooting on yourself, which we should never do. How do you pull yourself out of that mindset? And how do you ask the question mindfully, and also in a way that isn't, going to feed the ego, to uncover that? If you're really stuck and you can't figure out, okay, well, when I was 5, I like to color. Well, so does that mean you go out and become an artist? Like, how do you uncover that a little bit more on your own, so that you have a starting place when people would come to work with you? What would you tell people?
Yeah, well, there's some great resources out there. I love David Brooks's book, The Second Mountain, which talks about the first half and second half of life as mountain journeys. There's I'm forgetting his first name, but there's a Jungian analyst that publishes on Sounds True. That's written, his last name is Ellis, that's written some great books on the 2 acts of life. And, the shared ideas are that the first half of life is the time when you are forging your identity based on how you measure up to society, to external expectations, and validating yourself by how you measure up. And the second half of life, oftentimes, you enter this new way of being because of some sort of catastrophe or crisis that you've gone through. And so, people that are tuning in can probably have experienced or know people that have experienced, some sort of profound loss, whether it's an actual death or just the end of a intimate relationship, loss of career, loss of health, what have you. Those moments almost are moments where you could be broken and remain broken, or become broken and become broken open. And and that was my experience, was just, hitting the absolute bottom and emerging, with a much more open heart and a much more expansive view of who I am and what I'm here to do. And if you haven't experienced it that way, and I hope you can avoid that, but most of us won't. The thing to think about is, what has chasing society's carrots really got you. If, I work with many people who are incredibly successful based on the usual measurements of status, salary, and stuff, and yet they are profoundly unhappy. And I guess what I would share with listeners is, if that sounds familiar, you have to remember that all of the fame and fortune are amplifiers. If you are an unhappy person before you were famous and fortunate, you will be an even more unhappy person as fame and fortune comes your way. And if you were a person that was generally happy, it will amplify that. But because of this idea that society is always pulling us away from ourselves, very few of us can do the traditional path and feel really happy. So I love that scene in the Tom Hanks movie, Bridge of Spies or something like that, where the Russian spy has got caught and he's, it's very dire. His future is very dire indeed. And he's completely nonplussed by it. And Tom Hanks keeps saying, "Why aren't you worried? Why aren't you worried?" And his response is, "Would it help?" And so, that's kind of the same idea. It's like, if you're unhappy doing what you're doing, why do you continue to do the same thing day after day after day? Why not just imagine for a moment that there is another possibility for you to step into, and just take a small step into that possibility every day, and you can shift into a new way of being, a new way of thinking, a new way of seeing yourself, your situation, and others, that will, degree by degree, day by day, help you find fulfillment and forge a new identity based on who you really are, what you're really good at, and where you really belong. Very often, the Bhagavad Gita, which is a spiritual text about all of this from the yoga tradition, talks about how you can be living a shadow vocation much of your life. You can just be off by a degree or two, and you've missed it by just that much. But if you are willing to explore the edges of your understanding and abilities, and to embrace curiosity and consideration that maybe the way that you're doing it is not the only way, then I think you can start to shift your consciousness and shift your activities so that you inform a new mindset and a new way of being in the world.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I really want to go back to about that you just said, and they're so powerful. And the first one, it's going to go back a little ways, but it's when you were talking about you can be broken or you can be broken open. And that was so powerful to me, because yes, you can sit in your brokenness and you can stay where you are and you can stay in the past. Like that is your past. Or you can be broken open and walk into your future. And that's how I sort of took that, was like, wow, that's really a powerful way to look at things. It's like, yes, you can sit here and you can go through physical deaths where you're losing people in your life, or even emotional or spiritual, even career deaths. And you can stay there and say, well, this is what I knew. This is who I was. Or you can let yourself break open, which I can't remember exactly which philosophy it is, but it talks about the vase being put back together, and so the light can come in. And that's kind of what that reminded me of, is like, you have to be broken open so that the pieces can be put back together, but the light can still come in and out. And so that was really a powerful thing. And I wanted to mention that because I didn't want to just gloss over it. I was like, I wanted people to really grasp, like pay attention to that, because a lot of times we can sit in our brokenness and that's not doing us any good. It's not doing the world any good. And we have stuff to do. We got shiitake to get done.
Well, just to amplify that a little bit, because I think you're absolutely right. That is a really important component. I don't want to dismiss anyone's right to experience the emotion of sadness or grief over a profound loss of some sort. I mean, it's natural and human to, have that emotion and to need to sit with that emotion for a little while. But, what most spiritual and philosophical traditions teach us is, if you cling to that forever, you are complicit in your own suffering. And it's the clinging the clinging to pain that induces our own suffering. And, you have to experience the grief and the pain and the loss, and some of the suffering. And at some point, if you are able, and I think it's great to have, a therapist in your life or, amazing friends in your life that can help you with this. But, as you loosen your grasp, as you let go of your attachment, your ego identity attachments to whatever you're being cut away from, then the opportunity to be broken open and to start to see new possibilities and become a more considerate, compassionate, curious person really emerges.
Right. Yes, I'm really glad you clarified that, because I don't want to dismiss anyone's grief either. That's definitely not my intention, but to stay stuck there is, that's where some, and people do that. If they lose a spouse, you see that oftentimes they'll just continue life as though that person were still there, and they aren't living. They're just waiting to die, which is not a way to live. So yes, thank you for clarifying that. And I just love the visual of being broken open so that the new can come. And I really want to emphasize that. So the other thing that you said was I really found fascinating was being off by a degree. So I think a lot of times when we're moving into this transition, and I have lots of people in my life that are currently, we've got kids that are either graduating or have just graduated. And so we're moving into like that empty nest world. And I hear from friends, and I've said myself, I feel like I'm drifting. Like I'm out in a boat and I don't know which direction I'm going to go. And I think that the perspective you had of you could just be off by a little degree it's sort of soothing, because it's like you don't have to just go from here, this is what I've done all my life, to completely over here on another part of the map. And it reminded me of the story of how pilots navigate an airplane. So if you are going from California to New York and you're off by 1 degree, you could actually end up in Florida. And it's just that 1 degree over time that drifts you over to the wrong location. And so I think when we have our thoughts of, we're really not that far off. If we're just a little bit off, we can navigate the course and we can align ourselves to the right direction we want to go, which goes back to you saying, just one step at a time, because that makes it palatable. And I think it also makes it doable for people. They don't, when I speak to people, often when they're newer entrepreneurs, they're just like, oh, there's so much to do. And they're walking into the position of having had a team or an organization behind them to do a lot of the things that are now falling on their plate. And that can be really overwhelming. But staying in their lane and staying focused towards their goals and just taking consecutive action is going to get them to where they want to go. So I just wanted to also go back to that point. So the other piece that I find is so fascinating, you're one of my favorite people to follow on social media, just because it's refreshing. And I know a lot of people, if you haven't followed Scott, I'm going to put his stuff in the show notes, and you guys need to go find him, because he really has refreshing, upbeat posts. And I think we need more of that in the world. But I noticed one of the things that you're really regular about doing in those posts is spending time in contemplation in some way or another, whether that's reading a book and then you're meditating on what you've read or whatever that is. So if somebody doesn't have that as a practice in their life and they're wanting to do some inner connection before, moving in a new direction, how do they get started? What, maybe people are like, oh, I can't meditate, I've tried it, or, I meditate and my monkey brain is going wild. What advice would you give to somebody to move in that direction so that they are going inward and tuning into their inner purpose?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the compliments and the kind words. And I am married to a world-class meditator, and I am the world's crappiest meditator. And I have tried I desperately want to be one of those people that meditates. And I've spent years of my life trying, and it just doesn't work for me. And, people that are really big into meditation would give me all sorts of advice as how I can correct that, as if I have some sort of deficiency that needs help. But I do have a practice of my own that, involves my run or my walk at the cemetery every day. And, you and I were on social media together not too long ago, and you liked one of the quotes I shared from Marcus Aurelius, which is, remember, think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take it what is left and live it on purpose or live it properly. And that quote has been with me since the 7th grade. And there's a story behind why I run at the cemetery, but I go there daily. And I honestly have that in mind. The cemetery is a beautiful place in our town. It's on a hill overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains and farmlands, and there's a Disney Lake deer prancing around and bunnies hopping around and birds flittering about. And then there's these tombstones. And so it helps me connect to nature in the cosmological sense of being like interconnected with everything, and a reminder that, this is where we all end up, and any meaning my life has is based on how I think about it and what I do with it in my journey from womb to tomb. And whatever contemplative practice you can develop to just give some thought to that, I encourage you to spend a moment of your day. And it's easier for those of us that are in our life's third act or the second half of our life, because it's a lot closer than it used to be. And that can be fear-inducing for some people. They're like, I'm running out of time and I don't have it figured out. And, that's why you need to find your belonging, because you need to surround yourself with people that are on a similar journey, that have similar values, that will give you the real love that you need to help you lean into your potential and possibility. So whether that's a mentor, a coach, a teacher, a band of fellow travelers, or, one of the best ways I know to find the holes in your own habits and thinking is to teach other people what you already know, because that will reveal, where the missing pieces are, the things that need fixing. So it's, and one of the things that I really try to do in my posts are practice this thing I call empathetic antagonism, which is I give you something, I try to look at something from a different perspective in a counterintuitive way. I try to ask a provocative question so that you will lean into thinking about this thing in a new way for you, in a way that encourages you. Empathetic antagonism is all about creating a brave, safe space for a conversation that will cause you to rethink yourself and your situation and who you're spending time with, and then to do something. And, one of the things that I giggle at, and I say this with love because I've been one of these people that has, called myself a transformation coach or a mindset coach. And you see that all the time now. And what I came to was, what? Every coach, if they're worth anything, is going to deliver mindset and transformation as a side effect of doing the work that you're doing with clients. And, mindset is not, you don't get your mindset right and then do something. You do something and then your mindset changes. So mindset doesn't inform posture. Posture informs mindset. And if you do that over and over again, it will inform an attitude that, where you'll experience greater gratitude, generosity, curiosity, courage, conviction, all the things that you need to live a fulfilling life. And so, whatever you need to do to think about things, at Creative on Purpose, we call it living from the inside out. And that really comes from the ancient Oracle of Delphi had above the entrance, know thyself. That was the first thing you had to do. And you can't possibly be of service to anybody else fully. And you can't practice compassion and empathy for anybody else fully until you can do that for yourself. So whatever stories are going in your head, if they are fueling a negative ideas about yourself or negative behavior, we say at Creative on Purpose, choose your story, choose your future. It's literally that simple. Unfortunately, simple is never easy because we love those stories because we know how to operate in that safe place, even when it's not fueling our happiness and health. We know where we stand and what's expected. But if you start to expand those stories, tell yourself stories that promote your health and happiness and live into them by doing things, you will become a different person in a very short period of time.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And you're absolutely right. There's so much fascinating stuff that you just shared. I don't even know where to start, but I really, I find it fascinating, your daily run and just the symbolism of that, of, here I am, I'm still alive and I'm focusing on all of the things that are alive with me. And there's so much aliveness in the world. But at the end of the day, this is, a short amount of time that we have to make an impact, leave a legacy, and do all the things that we want to get done. And so thank you for sharing that. I know the audience is probably wondering if you'll share why you run through the graveyard, but if it's a longer story, we might have to have you come back on and tell that another time.
The short version is we raised our two sons on a farm in the northern part of the county that we live in. We lived there for 17 years. It was a wonderful place for the boys to grow up. While we were there, I started this running practice in my mid-40s because I was morbidly obese and I needed to get my health act together. I lost 75 pounds in a very short period of time by just starting with a walk to the top of the driveway and back, but eventually it turned into a 3 to 5 mile run. I became a person that entered 5Ks and sometimes won in my age group. When we moved to town, I couldn't give up my run, but I was thrilled. It's like, oh, there's sidewalks here and crosswalks, and I'll run. And it turned out that I was running to the cemetery and back, and was a 3 mile run. And on the very first day, I went out to take this run that I had scoped out. I was running across a crosswalk, and I literally came so close to getting hit by a car that the rear view mirror tugged at the fabric of my shirt. And I was, obviously very shaken. And I was like, okay, well, maybe if I don't want to end up in the cemetery, I should drive to the cemetery and I'll just run there because there's there's nobody speeding around the cemetery. And it turned out to be a beautiful place to run, and it turned into this contemplative practice that is just enriched my life so much.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. And I'm glad you did not get hit by the car.
Me too.
So anything else that comes to mind that you think, people should know about you and about how you work with others, particularly, or any advice that you would give people that are ready to start on this path and they really are ready for that breaking open point?
Well, you mentioned legacy earlier, and I'll just share that the way that we approach that is, we usually think about leaving a legacy in terms of leaving money and monuments behind, that speak to our greatness, or at least speak to the fact that we were here. But at Creative on Purpose, we say, live your legacy. And, living your legacy is focusing on the difference only you can make right now. And more people will remember you more kindly and with greater fondness and appreciation for the good that you did while you had the time and the opportunity to do it. And it is, we don't really fully understand, this journey that we're on it has this, what looks like a final destination in terms of being planted in the cemetery at some point. But do we really know? I don't know. So what, you have, we control very little in our lives. We think we're in control and that we're influencing and, we're the stewards of our experience and the captains of our destiny. But The fact of the matter is, the only thing that you really control is the quality of your thoughts and the actions that you take with them. And the whole point of most of the spiritual and philosophical texts of antiquity is the attachment to the rewards will only make you suffer, and that it is the intention and the integrity of the journey and what you're doing as you are navigating through life that will bring you a greater sense of fulfillment and happiness. And at the Art of Encore Living, we have a broadcast that I understand you're going to be a guest on very soon. I think tomorrow, actually, and we have a blog that shares plenty of insight and inspiration. We have, very low cost programs that will help you dial in your purpose or your calling in a weekend. And of course we have, all the way up to high ticket 3-month programs where we're going to dial in the difference only you can make and turn it into an online business that you can pursue part-time, and have some fun and fund your retirement at the same time. So just check out the website, and take what works for you and leave the rest.
I love that. And I will link all of the ways to connect with Scott in the show notes. So you can find those over at elisaconner.com/podcast. And the links will be below all the videos and all the things, all the places where this is going to end up. So a couple last few questions. One thing that when you were talking through legacy that I hear quite often from people that are kind of moving into this second part of their lives is they'll say to me, well, what if it's too late? And so I'm just wondering if you ever get that question from the people that you work with, like, what if it's too late and I can't make a difference or I can't leave a legacy? How would you answer that for them?
One of my clients came to me with they had just been delivered a terminal diagnosis and had a very short period of time to live. And although they were not, in complete, depression or despair about it, they were obviously deeply, deeply feeling, sad about that. And we worked together for the last 3 months of their lives, and they expressed towards the end that they had never been happier than they were right now. And, so if someone that is 3 months away from, knowing from their ultimate demise can find a way to feel like they have enhanced the lives of people that they care about, I think anybody can. We're creatures that make sense of ourselves, each other, and the world through narrative. Whatever story you're telling yourself is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to believe that it's too late, then it's too late. If you want to believe that you can start to take control of yourself and your situation and take a small step into developing your potential and delivering on your promise, you can do that. And, whether it's with us at the Art of Encore Living or somewhere else, I would encourage you to invest in yourself enough to explore the possibility that maybe you could make even a small difference, beginning right now.
I love that. That's a great answer. Okay, my last question for you, and then I'm going to let you head off and have the rest of your day, is you you often recommend, or I don't know if it's recommend, but you talk about books that have made a really big difference in your life. So if you had to give a recommendation for the one book that has been the most transformative to you and your personal journey to other people, what would that book be?
Well, when I was really young, I was in the 7th grade. I was a very troubled young man for reasons that we don't need to go into. But the consensus was little Scotty was headed to juvie or an early grave, and my parents took it upon themselves to reach out to a neighbor who was a headmaster at a really small private school that they couldn't afford, and just said, could we work something out? Could you take our son for a tour, and could we figure out a way that he could go there. He really needs some help. Headmaster took a liking to me, found some money so that I could attend this school. And I went from being one kid in a class of 30 or 35 to being one kid in a classroom of 7 that only had 2 teachers. One of them, Don Kelly, provided me with my first copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, which is a kind of one of the primary texts of Stoic philosophy, which a lot of people have heard about, but is grossly misunderstood. It's a philosophy from ancient Greece and Rome about living a very public and flourishing life by concentrating on the development of the content of your character and serving others. And then Scott Diddell was my English teacher. He turned me on to the Bhagavad Gita, which is a book about finding and living into your soul's true calling. And those 2 books have informed and inspired everything I've ever done through a music career, through a teaching career, through a coaching career. And they are the 2 books that I recommend most often.
Awesome. And I will hunt those down and put the links for those in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you. Do you want to let everybody know the best place to reach you? Is it your website? Is it social media? Where is the best place to go hang out with you and get to know you better?
I am reasonably easy to find online, but Creative on Purpose is where you can go to connect with me by email. If you go there, there's a free Art of Encore Living quick start guide that will help you dial in the difference only you can make and give you some ideas for how you might build that into an online business. And there's even an opportunity to jump on a 50-minute call with me to share a little bit about where you are, where you want to be, and I'll help you as best I can find a path to get you there as quickly as possible.
That's so awesome. Okay, well, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate you being here. And we look forward to possibly having you back. And if not, we'll catch up with you on social media.
Well, I love the work that you're doing, the difference that you're making, Elisa. It's been a privilege to spend this time with you, and I know that we will be spending some more time together.
So there you have it. I really enjoyed this interview with Scott Perry. I hope you get some great takeaways. There was so much goodness in this interview. And I hope it's things that you take and move forward with, that you apply to your everyday life. As Scott said, you can take little steps each and every day, and it's going to lead to big results. So don't forget to not stay broken, but instead of break open so that you can become who it is that you are destined to be and the legacy that you are destined to leave. And also, everything that you do, every step that you take is improving the life of somebody else. So thanks so much for tuning in this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to head over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or your favorite podcast listening host and leave me a review. If you found it valuable and what the interview Scott and I spoke about, I would love for you to share it with a friend as well. In the meantime, I hope you take care, stay safe, and that you continue to be well, and I will see you next week and in the coming weeks. I have multiple interviews coming to offer you some more insight on not only growing your business, but growing your mindset and tuning into the other important aspects of becoming successful in your second act. Take care. Did you miss something during the podcast? Maybe forgot to take notes? No worries, we've taken all the notes for you. All the resources, links, and information in this episode you can find over at alisaconnor.com/podcast. That's ALISACONNER.com/podcast.